What percent of security breaches could be avoided by simple steps such as updating software? Red for 78%, blue for 82, gold for 87, and green for 92. We have 9 answers in. It's exciting. Look at that. So exciting as it comes up. Wow, 20 answers already. Look at that. 15 of you with the correct answer, 92%. So now we have to see who is quick and smart. And where's the first look at the leaderboard?
Got that one wrong.
Ooh, Donald up there with 922. Jandy, come on, what's going on? So there we go. We're going to see the leader. We're going to see the leaderboard after every couple of questions. Okay. So congratulations to being off to a quick start. So Kathy, tell us a little bit about why getting back to the basics about security is important.
Sure. Thanks, Ken. So obviously, with everyone working remote and the distributed workforce, it's a lot harder to make sure that you are practicing good security hygiene. When you're in the office, we can do a lot. We can control the things that are in the office. But when you're remote, now you got to really be concerned about making sure that everything you can is patched. And we're not talking just the computers, we're not talking just the servers, but we're also talking about your network devices, which in the office, that would typically be your firewall, your switches, and your wireless. You likely have the same, at least those 3 components in your home as well. So you want to try to keep those updated as much as you can. And then not only just the hardware updates, but also all the Windows updates, or if you're Mac updates, also the software that you're using. So you want to make sure that you're updating your Office software, your browser software, Adobe, different types of excuse me, updates. So one of the things that we're seeing is that because everybody's remote, they're not necessarily thinking about this, and they're not necessarily able to easily track or actually accomplish it in any kind of systematic way. So just a reminder, get back to those basics and make sure you're patching everything. When you can, you also want to secure the network. So that includes things like a firewall. And since folks are remote, you want to make sure that you're doing a good job of securing the endpoints, the actual devices that they're using. That includes things like the antivirus software, something that's doing called DNS cleansing. So what it does is when you try to click on a link or click on either in an email or on a web browser, that it checks that link and makes sure that you're going to a safe location on the web. And of course, you want to always make sure that you're backing up your data. And if everybody was in the office and they're all centrally located, that might actually be an easier thing to do. But with everybody distributed, you do have to worry about, hey, people might be pulling things down to their local machines and have a lot more data locally on the machine that they're using remotely. And so you want to make sure you're practicing good security and also backup so that you are protected and you can avoid 92% of security breaches just by that one, just by getting back to the basics and patching and having good backup in place.
Basics work.
Basics work.
So, okay, I think we're ready for our next question. I'm going to try to advance and let's see how we go.
All right.
Multi-factor authentication occurs when you approve a financial transaction, you log into your computer using your profile credentials, you submit 2 or more pieces of evidence to an authentication mechanism, you multiply 2 factors. We've got 13 answers, got a few more people to come in. Let's hope we get a full set up. 16 folks got the correct answer, which is you submit 2 more pieces of evidence to an authentication mechanism. So here we go. Let's see if Donald's toppled.
All right.
Ooh, Gene, look at that. So that's very important. So, Kathy, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who's knocking at the door when you're trying to get into a network?
Okay, so first I just want to remind everybody that typically what we encourage everybody to do is to have a unique account for each user. And whenever possible, don't share accounts. Now, sometimes there's websites or places that you go to where you do have to share them. And when you do that, obviously, when you can, we would like you to put MFA on everything, especially on shared accounts. But MFA in particular, what that does is it's two pieces of authentication. So you put in your user ID and your password, and typically most people are using their cell phone as the second as the second authentication piece. But don't just think beyond email. Any of the websites, banking that you go to, social media sites that you go to, your applications, your software applications and things of that nature, if they're in-house or cloud-based, if you can implement MFA on it, you should. Because what we're finding is that by having those multiple layers of authentication, that is how we're stopping the ransomware and the attackers from getting in. We've had some sad incidents throughout all of this where we've had what they call lock and leak or name and shame. They will encrypt the data if you don't pay the ransom, or because you have the backup, you think, oh, I don't need to pay the ransom, I have my backup. They will then say, well, you know, we're going to take your data and we're going to expose it out on the public. And this has actually recently happened in the news. So if you're paying attention to the news, you can see some current instances of this. The other thing is we remind everybody to have really strong password policies, you know, unique passwords for everything, which leads you nicely into having a password manager. You know, the average person has somewhere around 80 accounts that they're trying to keep track of. I don't know about you, but I can't keep track of 80 accounts. So the password manager is a godsend. So unique passwords, strong passwords, you know, long use passphrases in particular, they're harder to get, but they're more memorable. So strong password policies and password manager will help tremendously to help keep those hackers from knocking at your door, and they'll move on to somebody else instead. Next
All
question.
right, great, thanks. Our next question is a what would you do kind of question. So a little bit more thinking involved here. So let's see if we can get going. Here we go. Microsoft sends you an email indicating that your password is out of date and you must set a new one. Your next step is follow the link and reset the password, delete the email, reset your password manually, reply asking for more information. Look, lots of thinking going on. I can see that. Here we go. 4 seconds left. 20 answers. Do we have it? Look at that. Oh, reset your password manually is not the correct answer. It is delete the email. That's a blue winner. So now I think we go right to let's see how we're doing. Donald, Jean.
Back.
He's back. He's back with a vengeance. Look at that. Excellent. Okay, I think we're ready for another question right in a row. So here we go.
Yummy, moving up.
The best defense against a phishing attack is email filtering, VPN, virtual private network, human intelligence, or antivirus software. Two seconds left, 20 answers. And human intelligence, at least we got everybody, all the humans, 9 out of 20 of us got it. So that's great. Let's see who's on top. Boy, it's Rich coming on. Good. Let's go. Okay. So Kathy, why don't you talk about the human factor in all of this?
Okay, so the one thing that we really want to emphasize is that your best protection against insecurity is the human firewall. It's really the people in your office. No matter how strong your security is, one person can make a mistake and undermine the whole thing. So you want to make sure that you're educating them and that you're training them on security awareness, things like what to do when you get a phishing email. You know, the gut reaction there on that question was to go out and change your password. You don't necessarily need to do that. What you really need to do is be smart enough to realize that this is a phishing email and delete it, which is why we had that as the correct answer. If you are concerned, there's certainly no harm in changing your password, but what you should do, let's just pretend it's your Office 365 password. You should personally manually go over to your web page, go to Office 365's web sign-in page and change your password there. But the human firewall is, step number one. You want to teach people how to recognize a phishing email. Sadly, we had somebody call us. They are preying on folks in the remote workforce. And the other one that they do is they're preying on people's sympathies through all of this. I need help because of COVID or things of that nature. And it may look very legitimate, but it's still a phishing email, and they are managing to get money and information out of people. The other one you'll notice I have all these social networks here too. So one of the things I just wanted to mention about this is that quite often what they're doing is they're now starting to troll these social networks and get the answers to for example, when you go into a banking site, they'll ask you, well, who was your firstborn, or what school did you go to first, or things like that. And so what you want to do is be careful about what you're putting up on social networks. If you're comfortable sharing that information on a social network, that's great. But then maybe what you want to do instead as a trick, or a tip, is something that I like to do. I get asked, where did you go to school first? And instead of putting the legitimate answer in there, I'll put something like, or they'll ask you what's your mother's maiden name. Instead of answering my mom's maiden name, I'll put in Skywalker because, she's related to Luke and Leia Skywalker. And so I'll keep track of that, and I'll put that into my password manager. So you can still share on your social media sites, but when they give you those social questions that they're asking you for your security questions, perhaps come up with a fun answer that you could use instead. And again, save that in your password manager. And one of the other things I meant to mention back with the MFA is that quite often when you set up MFA, they'll give you something called a recovery password, so that if your phone kicks the bucket and you have to replace your phone, some of them will allow you to go in and change the MFA, but some of them will request this thing called a recovery password. So when you set up the MFA, if it offers you up a recovery password, you want to make sure you save that and put it in a nice secure place as well. So next question, Ken.
Cool. I think that Twitter logo needs to get a new paint job, but let's go on to the next question. We have 3 more to go. Okay, so if you really want to get on the top of the podium, this is the time to make the move. Here's the next set of questions. When a hacker sees all your incoming email, they have access to your password, have auto-forwarded messages in your account, lay in wait to get information needed for an attack, or all of the above. We're halfway there with answers, so let's go, people. Here we go. And look at that, all of the above. We got look at that, people getting smarter just during this webinar, Kathy. This is awesome. All right. I think someone made a move. I just feel it.
Donald, hang on. Hold on.
Oh no, okay.
Yeah.
Rich is on a streak though. 5 correct answers in a row. Great job, Rich. Okay, so we got another question. Excuse me, right in a row. Here we go. Your client asks you to complete a 7-page IT security questionnaire filled with lots of technical stuff. What do? Answer the questions as best you can and return it to the client. Answer yes to all the questions, asking about IT security you have in place. Get guidance from your trusted professional in IT, or send them a copy of your IT security policy manual. Lots of thinking going on with this one, I see. Very good. People want to get it right. Get guidance from your trusted professional. Excellent work, folks. They're getting smarter. It's right in front of our eyes. I'm excited. Kathy, you want to talk about why these kinds of things are important?
Sure. I can do that after we see.
Oh, sorry. There's the
duck here. Steve,
yeah.
Jumping up. Woohoo. Okay. All right. So when it comes to these security policies, these questionnaires, they tend to ask a lot of technical questions, and we see them come in often from our clients. Their clients are asking them, We see them come in for cybersecurity. When you're applying for your cybersecurity insurance, they'll often ask you what things you have in place. If you accept credit cards in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get asked these types of questions on your PCI compliance audit. And then, of course, there's all kinds of industry-specific ones that are out there as well. So one of the things that we like to emphasize here is that you need to have a nice IT security policy and structure in place, and you need to make sure that you don't have things hiding like this little mouses in the clouds. A lot of people, a lot of our clients, what we find is we start to talk to them and, well, what kind of data do you have and where is it and how is it stored? And we discover, for example, yeah, you know, we work with outside consultants and we get their social security numbers so that we can pay them as a 1099. But we also help reimburse them for travel expenses and things like that. So they may end up with documents or PII information about maybe their passport or their driver's license or credit card numbers so that they can make a reservation for these people as well. So one of the things we want to mention, you know, make sure that you're looking at all your data. Make sure that you're not hiding information that's valuable inside of all of your other stuff and have it all jumbled together. And what you want to do then is segregate it out. Things that are truly not confidential, put over here and give general access. But if it's something confidential, put in some access levels in place and classify it and make sure that people understand that something that's over here in the classified area should not be copied or stored over in this sort of wide open, not confidential area. The other thing is you want to review this on a regular basis, because what we found is people thought that they were keeping things segregated, but they were sneaking in. So we would say roughly once a year, you want to evaluate this and re-architect this. One of the things we also find is as we're helping clients move from having in-house on-prem servers to the cloud, that this is a super time to have that discussion and really dig into the data. And then last but not least, you want to test what your vulnerabilities are from the inside out, both on the inside and on the outside. So if you accept credit cards, PCI compliance is now starting to require that you do inside vulnerability scans in addition to external vulnerability scans. So we're seeing more and more of this with our clients. And then one of the things I pointed out on this one last bullet here about the logging, if you look at it, most breaches are taking months to be detected. And what we're finding is because it's taking months, that quite often all of the audit trails and the audit logs that you need to back into how this happened and what the breadcrumbs that are left behind, they may be gone, because quite often people aren't keeping the logs for long periods of time. So the first step is obviously get the logging enabled so that you have the breadcrumbs. And then the second thing is start to evaluate how long do you need to keep them and manage them. By doing these things, so even if something does happen, let's just say, you know, I'm breached. If I don't have access to the classified data, the risk of what's going to be exposed for the company goes way down. So that's why you want to segregate your data as best as you can.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. I think we're ready for the last question. When you use a public Wi-Fi network, your device and data are theoretically accessible on the World Wide Web, accessible to anyone on that network, broadcast throughout the network, or secure and protected. Couple, 13 seconds left. Big finish here. Lots of thinking. And the correct answer for almost a little over half of you is accessible to anyone on that network. That is correct, because connectedness is important and wonderful for collaboration, but can have some issues, right, Kathy?
That is correct. So one of the things that we're seeing now is that as folks moved to working from home, that they're a lot more mobile. You know, a lot of companies had desktops, they've moved to laptops. You know, a lot of us, you know, maybe you were already going prior to COVID, going into Starbucks or whatever and jumping on the Wi-Fi there. Theoretically, if you're at Starbucks and you jump onto their Wi-Fi, other people on their Wi-Fi can see you unless you have something in place to protect your device, whether it's your cell phone or your laptop. So one of the things we want to make sure you do is have some sort of a plan and protections in place to prevent that. The other thing that we are encouraging, because more people are moving towards laptops, their desire to be able to install things on the laptop, maybe the remote, they want to, maybe download, Kahoot or download a Dropbox or something like that. You want to think about what they can and cannot install on the individual devices. And what we're seeing from an industry and a trend standpoint is that we're seeing people move more towards instead of denying you the ability to download things, we're implementing technologies that flip that around. And essentially you whitelist, or you say, these are the only things that are allowed to run on this machine. So it's a zero trust type of a model. So instead of saying you can download whatever you want, or we're going to deny you the ability to download something, we're going to say, no, this is the subset of what you need for your job, and that's it. If you want something outside of the scope of that, you need to get assistance from the IT department. The other piece to this is that the technologies that we're rolling out now are starting to leverage artificial intelligence. And the SEIM is System Events and Information Management. The logging that I mentioned previously, they're using AI to filter through all of those logs and now trigger and alert you when something that is untoward is happening. So these are all things that we're starting to see roll out now, whereas in the past, people were less concerned because they were in an office behind a firewall. And so you may find that we're going to be reaching out to some of you to talk about the implications of this and what you might want to do to tighten up the security in your own environment. And so
I think we get a chance to see the leaderboard.
I think that's next.
There's the final podium.
Go.
Ed
Ooh.
comes in at number 3. Woohoo, Ed!
Yay,
Number 2 is Lisa.
Lisa came on strong at the end there.
Good job.
And Donald. Yay!
You.
He led the way the whole time.
Steve Liship. There you go, Steve. Good job.
All right. Okay, so that was it, what we had planned for today. We will be
questions.
There are some questions. All right, let me just pop this up here and let's see what the questions are. Let's look in the chat. Should have had a place for Dan. I forgot to introduce some of the IT Radix people at the beginning. We have Dan, our Master of Ceremonies, behind the Wizard of Oz, behind the curtain. And then we have Robin and Paula with us as well, plus some of our technical team. I don't know if they have their screens showing. Let's see, what do we got? We've got Kahoot, the game pen.
First one is from Casey.
Well, let's see, missed question to help. Let's see. Donald takes one for, okay. What are your thoughts on very long, simple-ish natural language passwords? I like those. I think that is the way, that is what they're recommending now in terms of passwords, is using some passphrases or things that you could, string together that are memorable, but have meaning to you. One of our techs actually here, I like asking her for passwords because she's extremely good at this. Tracy, you'll ask her for a password and your password will be ice 20 cream 21, and it's, I can remember that. And it's, I love ice cream. So it's easy peasy for me to remember, and she'll put some capital letters in there and it's got some numbers, and maybe she'll do an explanation point at the end. But I think that is a great way to handle the passwords. I would still put that in a password manager though, and I would have a unique one for every site that I go to. So because the gibberish, the next thing says, I read short gibberish is easier for computer to hack than the long. The longer that it is, the better. Length definitely matters, because if you think about a computer, I don't know if you remember War Games. Remember that scene in War Games where it was flashing up there and it was, figuring out the numbers for the launch codes. It's the exact same thing when they're trying to crack a password. It's going through every iteration, and the longer it is, the more iterations it has to go through. So definitely length is more important over complexity. If you had to pick between the two, let's see. And then automatically the password managers, this is actually a good point. A lot of the password managers will help you generate a password. So you can click a little, generate my password, and it'll save it in there. And then what they also will do is populate the answers into a web browser. One of the things I will suggest though is if you have a password manager that you're using and you're just moving into it, you should clear your browser cache passwords and then install the password manager and then start to save them into your password manager, because most of the password managers aren't emptying out what you already have in your browser cache. And so I would do that as step one: clear your cache, put your browser extensions in with the password manager, and then, fill those into the, populate your password manager with those passwords. Let's see, good book on cybersecurity. This is how they tell me the world ends, all about zero-day exploits. Casey's password is super secure. Let's see, how can we update a browser? Chrome, for example. Dan, can you help me with that? Put you on the spot, Dan.
I didn't see that question.
It's at the very end. It says, how can we update a browser? Chrome, for example. So
Did that just come to you? Can you read it?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I can. It just says, how can we if you wanted to update Chrome, what would you suggest somebody do?
On just one machine,
Yeah.
if you just go to the top right where it has the 3 dots, and then go to help and about Chrome, that'll check for the update and tell you your current version. And if there is an update, you just hit relaunch and it updates it.
Great. Okay. So most of the browsers, Firefox has a similar thing. You can actually set them up to, to prompt you when they have updates as well. We find sometimes people ignore those. And the other thing that we would like to see you do is to have it in such a way that you can tell if somebody has updated their browser, if they're behind. And that's one of the things that our management agent is able to tell us. So let's see, this last question says, can the browser manager be hacked, or would a firewall prevent access to your machine? So if somebody gets onto your machine and they're able to run any kind of a script, this is why I suggest clearing out your cache, because if they're on your machine and they run a script, they can easily extract any passwords that you have saved in your browsers. So I'm not quite sure if I totally understand this question in terms of the browser manager be hacked.
I think password manager maybe.
The
like
password
a passport.
manager. So the password managers, obviously they could in theory be hacked, but they have put all kinds of things in place to prevent that. But the other thing on password managers is by default, some of them don't require MFA. And if they don't, I would obviously recommend that you turn that on, because your password manager is sort of like the top, the keys to the kingdom. So if you use a password manager, obviously use a user ID and password and some other level of multi-factor authentication with it. Most password managers, in my experience, offer that as a standard thing now, but they don't necessarily make it mandatory. Okay. Hardware firewalls necessary. I believe that they are adding an extra layer of security. So I would answer yes. What they do is, if you think about how your network is constructed, there's the internet connection coming into whether it's your house or your office, and then it hits the ISP's piece of equipment, which is usually a router or a modem, and then it hits your network, whatever's behind it that they don't control. So the next piece that you want it to hit is that firewall, and the firewall is going to actually look inside the packets that come through and say, is this something that somebody on this side of the network requested, and allow it through. It's also going to do some light scanning for viruses and things of that nature. And you can also now configure some of the more sophisticated firewalls like a SonicWall to look inside of encrypted SSL traffic as well. So one of the things that people will use is they'll use, you go to a website for SSL, the point behind SSL, when you get that little, HTTPS and the little padlock down in the bottom, is that what's happening is every piece of data that's going back and forth at that point is now encrypted. So you can get pieces of equipment that can look inside that encrypted traffic and make sure that it's still legitimate stuff that's going in and out of your network. So firewalls, we still recommend them. You know, frankly, I have one in my home. You know, you do get like a really sort of light one from the ISPs, but I would suggest that you consider using a firewall pretty much as a fire, because it is blocking things like traffic trying to hack in, denial service attacks, and things like that. Let's see, what's this next question? It says, what about people that log in and sync their passwords with a service like Google, Firefox, or Microsoft? I am not a huge fan of that, but I know people that do. So I would suggest that you have, one of the things that we do find with some of the password managers is that they will now block you from being able to do that type of syncing between the services. You know, I think, you know, you need to, this goes back to education and educating your employees around what you're allowing them to do and not do. So as an example, since Casey, I know you're in marketing, there's a tool called Hootsuite that you can use it to schedule social media posts, and you have to allow it to get into your LinkedIn, for example, so that it can, you know, push your LinkedIn posts out automatically on a scheduled basis. So one of the things that, you know, you have to authorize Hootsuite to get into your LinkedIn account. And so I think what you want to teach your users to do is that, you know, think twice about using your Google account or your Facebook account or whatever to log into other sites. I'm always a big fan of, you know, my son, God bless him, you know, he wanted to buy something on StockX or whatever the website was, and it, you know, it nicely offered up, here, log in with your Facebook account. But if your Facebook account gets hacked, now they can get into your StockX account, which has a credit card attached to it, and, you know, and it can ripple all the way through. So my suggestion would be, is wherever possible, just have a unique account for every single site, and don't do this, you know, connected logins. Some things you do have to do it though. There's just no getting around it, you know. So again, it goes back to that education and making sure that you're vetting, okay, you know, I've decided that Hootsuite is the platform we're going to use for posting social media, and it wants access to LinkedIn. I'm good with that because I believe that Hootsuite and LinkedIn have appropriate security measures in place. I'm not so confident with StockX, you know. So that would be my advice there. Any other questions? Anybody? Dan, do you have any thoughts on any of those things that I just said?
You nailed it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know sometimes the techs disagree with me on some of these things, but I'm my background is I came from Exxon, and they were huge. I used to call them security and controls freaks. But, you know, living in the world we live in today, it's served me well. So that's it. Thank you for joining us today. You know, from Ken and myself and the rest of the IT Radix team, we hope you enjoyed our little Kahoot experiment here. We will be sending you a feedback form. If you could please take a moment to fill that out. We really do read every one of those and try to build in, you know, future events based on the feedback that you give. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Barry.
Bye.